This video is made possible by Corvette Mike Midwest. Corvette Mike Midwest is your one-stop shop for amazing, timeless classic vehicles. If you are looking to buy a classic or sell your classic vehicle, please contact Corvette Mike Midwest with the information up on the screen or linked in the description below.
Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I'm driving a 1957 Ford Thunderbird convertible. Up front is a 5.1 liter V8 and down below is a 3-speed automatic transmission. Now I'm super excited to be driving this here Thunderbird for two reasons. First of all, it looks fantastic. I love 50s cars and this is one of the most iconic ones there is, besides obviously the Bel Air. But the second reason is the fact that if you're a fan of the channel, you'll know that I have a 1931 Ford Model A at home. It's one of my summer cars. And so I'm very curious to see how much Ford changed in the 20 years between that car and this one. Now, the Ford Thunderbird was actually the answer to Chevy's Corvette. They announced the Corvette in 1953 and Ford said, hey, we got to figure something out to combat that. And so that was the Thunderbird, and they sold for quite some time. There was tons of generations of them, but this is the first. This is the genesis of the Thunderbird, and I love that. Let's get back to that 5.1 liter, 312 cubic inch V8. It's fine, it makes about 245 horsepower, and it's not the biggest slouch in the world, but you're not really going to tear up the drag strip either in this form. However, it is a nice, comfortable cruising car, and it being a V8, you have tons of torque, you have enough power to go down the street, you're fine. You're not going to feel a lack of power at all. Now, like I said, paired to it is an automatic transmission, which is very, very interesting because this is sort of a very primitive automatic transmission. They weren't really super common back in the 50s. Now, they of course existed, but not every single car came with one like they do today. And so it seems to be shifting actually pretty well. It shifts better than some modern cars. Actually, I haven't really even noticed it, which is the best thing about an automatic transmission is you're not thinking about it. Now, last but not least, of course, the Thunderbird is rear-wheel drive. So let's talk about the interior. We have a couple interesting things to go through in here and a couple of sizing issues because I don't quite fit in this car. So in front of me, I have 5 different gauges. I have my RPM all the way down at the bottom left. It's a very small gauge and apparently very insignificant in Ford's eyes. I of course have a fuel gauge in the upper left, speedometer in the middle, temperature on the right, and just a clock on the lower right. So everything you really need in a car, you have right in front of you. What's interesting is that right in front of me, down below the speedometer, there's actually a GEN light, and that is for the generator because these cars came with generators instead of alternators. You can also see that on the very first year Mustang, but it was actually switched out for 1965. Now, the steering wheel doesn't have anything on it except for a little ring, and that's actually how you trigger the horn, which it sounds like a sitcom. Like that's just like a sound clip that they use. I love that. Now, to the left, I have a couple interesting buttons. Now, first of all, I have left air. So this is actually the controls for the air vent on the left, which are found on the left, where in modern cars, everything is in the middle. But I also have the ignition key off to the left, like a Porsche or something of the sort, which is very, very interesting for Ford to do. Even the Model A's had the ignition switch on the right side. On the door, the upper one is the handle and the lower one is of course the crank for the window. Moving into the center, I do have a proper cigarette lighter, a very primitive radio that has 2 different settings for town or country, which is really funny and something you don't see these days. Then to the right of that, that's actually where you'll find your climate controls. It does not have AC, however, it does have vents that allow fresh air into the cabin, but I mean, guys, this is a convertible. I don't think I can take much more fresh air than this. Speaking of air conditioning, I do have a little vent here down by the foot. So when I open this, watch what happens. That's it. That's your AC. I do have a little ashtray that pulls out of the dash too because, well, it's the 50s and you gotta have your ashtray. And then I don't actually get a center console. What is in between the seats, well, this is a bench seat really, but there is the shifter. Now, like I said, 3-speed automatic, and the shifter is a little close to the driver, It's tapping my kneecap every so often, but I don't think I was built for a car like this.
Of course, the Thunderbird fails the big friggin' bottle test on the basis that it has no cup holders.
And that brings us to the seats. The seats are nice and comfortable. They only have lap belts, but the seat is rather close to the steering wheel. This car is not big man friendly. Now, this car does not have a back seat, thank God, because I don't know where one would go. But it does have the convertible top, so I'll show some footage of what it looks like with the convertible top up. And it is, of course, fully manual. But, I mean, this is a roadster. This is a convertible. You drive this car with the top down. You really should not drive it with the top up. It's an emergency top if you absolutely need it. If a rain cloud comes out of nowhere, sure. But really, for all intended purposes, this is the drop top, and you keep that top down. So I want to take a quick second to talk about the trunk. First of all, this is how you access the key slot on the back. But once we're in the trunk, obviously tons and tons of space in here. I mean, you could fit a family in here if you needed to. However, one thing I wanted to point out was this. This is very important. This is the spare tire. Now, older Thunderbirds, because they debuted in 1955, but this is a 57, the 55 and 56 had the rear spare tire, had it mounted on the rear. In 1957, they moved it back into the trunk. So if you're looking at a Thunderbird and it has that rear mounted spare tire, but it looks like this, then it's a 55 or 56. The 57 moved it back into the trunk. Very important when identifying Thunderbirds. Now we have to talk about the looks, and I think this car looks fantastic. I love the rear fins on it. The rear fins were actually made larger for 1957, and I love the look of it. It's so classic. It's so quintessential 50s that the Beach Boys wrote a song about it. I mean, like, what, you thought I wasn't gonna talk about the song? Come on. Fun, Fun, Fun is one of the best Beach Boys songs, and it's literally written about a Thunderbird. I mean, how can you go wrong? And so my overall thoughts on this car is that it's not good for me because I don't quite fit in this, and it's rather uncomfortable for me to drive. However, I love just the look and feel of this car. It has enough power. It definitely has that 50s feel, that sort of fun in the sun, Beach Boys vibe. And so to close this out, there's two cars I want to compare this to. First of all, my 1931 Ford. This drives so much better than my 31 Ford. The amount of ground that Ford covered between 1931 and 1957 is astonishing. I mean, they came from different planets. This car is so much easier to drive, so much better than the Model A. But the other car I want to compare this to is that this actually isn't the first Thunderbird I've driven. I drove a 2002 Ford Thunderbird, and that is, compared to this, a sad excuse for a Thunderbird. That car isn't nearly as fun. It was just sold to people that sort of liked the Thunderbird name, but just wanted a weird, odd displacement V8 from Ford, and they wanted the interior of a Ford Taurus. This is a true Thunderbird, and I'm so glad that I was finally able to get behind the wheel of one of these and experience what they're really, really like. And it really is just fun in the sun. It's uncomfortable to drive. It doesn't have a great amount of power, but it just puts a smile on my face. This whole drive, I've just been cheesing, and it's just the best. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Corvette Mike Midwest. Their information is up on the screen. They have tons of really, really cool cars for sale all the time. Please go check them out. They have tons of, obviously, Corvettes, but other really, really cool classics. I reviewed a Bel Air from them, and it was just so special and unique, and I think you guys will really enjoy it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.